You know how it is you're juggling so much. Maybe trying to get up to speed for a meeting or finally understand that topic you keep hearing about. Or just figure out your own habits.
Right. You want the core insights, but without wading through everything.
Exactly. And that's what we do here. We take the deep dive for you, pull out the crucial stuff.
And today, we are really getting into something fundamental.
Mhm.
Habits, how they form, the science behind them, and importantly, how you can actually use that understanding.
Okay, so let's see what we're working with. We've got um, quite an interesting mix. First, this scientific paper, habit formation viewed as structural change in the behavioral network. Sounds heavy, but it gives this really cool, like, architectural view.
Yeah, a network science take. And then we've got insights from Making Health Habitual and The Science of Habits from Knowable Magazine, more on the practical psychology side.
So we're going from this network model deep in the brain right out to everyday advice.
It's a great combo because we all think we know what a habit is something you do often, but the psychological definition, that's much more useful.
Okay, so let's start there then. Psychologically speaking, what is a habit?
Well, according to Making Health Habitual, it's basically an automatic action. It gets triggered by specific cues in your context, the situation, the place, maybe something you just did.
Ah, okay. Like washing your hands after using the restroom or buckling the seatbelt as soon as you get in the car. You don't really decide to do it each time.
Exactly. Those are perfect examples. The context just flips the switch. It's automatic.
So it's different from, say, deciding to make coffee because you want coffee. That's goal-directed.
Right, precisely. That's driven by the outcome you want. The network science paper really digs into this shift, how a behavior moves from being driven by its consequences to being directly triggered by the situation.
So the cue itself starts the action, not the thought of, I want the result.
Yeah, the outcome, the reward, it sort of takes a back seat once
Hmm.
the habit is formed. The cue becomes king.
That's a big shift in thinking about it. And the psychology sources, they really hammer home repetition, don't they? And context.
Absolutely. Consistent repetition, doing the same simple thing in the same context over and over. That's how the brain builds the link. It's basic associative learning.
Our brains just get really good at pairing the cue with the action.
Extremely good. And the more you repeat it, the more automatic it gets. You need less conscious effort, less motivation, less willpower even to get it started.
That saves brain power.
Huge cognitive benefit. Frees up your mind for, more complex stuff than deciding whether to brush your teeth.
Okay, I'm really curious about this behavioral network idea from the other paper. What does that actually look like? Can you paint a picture?
Okay, so imagine all the things you could possibly do as little points or nodes. And the links between them, the transitions, are like connections or edges. This paper suggests habit formation isn't some separate system, it's a change within this big interconnected network of behavior.
Huh. So it's not like there's a habit center activating. It's more like the existing pathways are rewiring themselves.
That's the idea. The transition from deliberate action to habit comes from a structural change. Specifically, the connections, the edges, start concentrating onto that one particular response, the habit.
So doing the action in that context strengthens certain connections, making that action the most likely thing to happen next time.
You got it. Their simulations showed exactly that. Habit formation occurs when edges are concentrated on a specific response. And this leads to something really interesting they call resistance to devaluation.
Resistance to devaluation. Okay,
Yeah.
what's that mean in practice?
It means that once the habit is strong, it keeps going. Even if the original reward isn't there anymore, you don't even want it, the cue triggers the action, regardless.
Wow.
Yeah. And they also found that the habit response becomes like a key junction, a shortcut in the network between other behaviors. It becomes really central.
So even if I started exercising to lose weight, once it's habit, I might keep doing it even when my weight is stable. Just because it's Tuesday morning and I always go to the gym then.
Precisely. The context takes over.
Okay, switching gears slightly, something super practical. How long does this actually take? We always hear that 21-day thing.
Ah, yes, the famous 21 days. Yeah, one of the psychology articles, Making Health Habitual, busts that myth pretty effectively.
Oh, good. So what's the real story?
Well, the research they looked at found that on average, it takes about 66 days of daily repetition for a behavior to reach peak automaticity, that point where it feels truly ingrained.
66. Wow, okay. That's like more than 2 months? Almost 10 weeks?
It is quite a bit longer than 3 weeks. The 21-day thing seems to come from some observations back in the 60s about patients adjusting after surgery, not really about forming everyday habits.
Right, not quite the same thing. So 66 days is the average?
Right.
Does it vary?
Oh, definitely. There was a huge range in the study. Simpler things, like drinking a glass of water after breakfast, much faster. More complex routines took, considerably longer.
So setting expectations closer to, say, 10 weeks might actually help people stick with it rather than giving up after week 3 thinking they've failed.
Exactly. Managing expectations is key. Complexity matters, and so does how consistent you are with the repetition and the context. The clearer the cue and the more regularly you respond, the faster it tends to form.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks then. Strategies. How do we actually build the habits we want?
The Science of Habits article has some great practical stuff. First big one. Start small, like really small. Don't try to run a marathon tomorrow. Maybe just put on your running shoes.
Okay, tiny steps. Avoid overwhelm. Makes sense. What else?
Leverage those cues we talked about.
Yeah.
Be deliberate. What existing routine can you attach the new habit to? Time of day, place, the action you just finished.
Like your coffee example earlier. Or if I want to floss, maybe put the floss right on top of the toothpaste.
Perfect. Make the cue unavoidable. And then rewards, especially immediate rewards. Our brains run on dopamine, and it works on a pretty short timescale. Long-term benefits are great, but they don't always cement the habit early on.
The instant gratification thing actually works for us here. Like only listening to your favorite audiobook while you're exercising.
Exactly that. It pairs the desired action with immediate pleasure. They also mention the fresh start effect. Big life changes like moving or a new job disrupt old routines and create openings for new ones.
A window of opportunity.
Yeah, and interestingly, flexibility might be better than rigid scheduling. There's a study at Google, apparently, where just rewarding daily workouts whenever they happen worked better long-term than insisting on the same time every day.
That is interesting because life happens, right? If you miss your 7 a.m. slot, a rigid plan falls apart. Flexibility lets you recover.
Precisely. And finally, prepare your environment. Set out the running shoes, chop the vegetables beforehand, break the action into tiny concrete steps to make starting easier.
Okay, really useful stuff for building good habits. What about ditching the bad ones? Is it just the reverse?
Similar principles, but slightly different focus. Again, preparation is key. Identify the triggers for the bad habit. What situations, feelings, times of day set it off.
So if I know stress makes me reach for cookies, I need to be aware when I'm stressed.
Exactly. Awareness is the first step. Then substitution is often much more effective than just trying to stop. Don't just leave a void.
Right, replace the unwanted action with something else, like the classic chewing gum instead of smoking example.
That's the one. Find a healthier alternative that perhaps scratches a similar itch. Which leads to the next point. Understand the motivation. What need is that bad habit actually meeting?
Okay. So maybe smoking isn't just nicotine, it's also the ritual, the break, the social aspect.
Could be any of those. And if you understand the underlying need, maybe the need for a break, you can find a healthier way to meet it, like a short walk or a quick chat.
Instead of just white-knuckling it against the urge.
Yeah. And a final piece of advice they give, try to consciously slow down. Especially when you feel rushed or distracted, because that's when autopilot, often the bad habit autopilot, takes over. Take a breath, think before acting.
Bringing some mindfulness to those moments makes sense. But, okay, reality check, we all slip up. What happens then? Is it back to square one?
That's a common fear, but usually, no. Setbacks happen, it's normal. But the good news, according to the Science of Habits, is that rebuilding is generally easier than starting from scratch.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
Think of it like a path you've worn in the grass. Even if it gets a bit overgrown from disuse, the pathway is still there. It's easier to clear it again than to forge a completely new path.
That's a really helpful way to look at it. So a relapse isn't total failure.
Not at all. The key is not to let one slip-up derail you completely. Acknowledge it, maybe figure out what triggered it, and get back on track with the desired habit as soon as you can.
Okay, so let's pull this all together. Habits are these automatic responses triggered by cues in our environment, built up through repetition.
Right, and we can even think about that process thanks to network science as connections strengthening within our overall behavioral network.
And building good ones means starting small, using cues smartly, getting immediate rewards, being a bit flexible, and prepping our environment.
While breaking bad ones involves spotting triggers, substituting healthier actions, understanding the why behind them, and, trying not to run on autopilot.
And crucially, knowing that setbacks happen, but rebuilding is easier than starting over.
Absolutely. And the payoff for this conscious effort is huge. You invest energy up front, but eventually these positive behaviors become second nature, freeing up your mental energy for other things. It's a powerful long-term strategy.
So for you listening right now, maybe think about one tiny change, one consistent action in a specific context you could start today, or maybe one unwanted behavior. What's its trigger? What could you substitute? How could you start reshaping your own behavioral network, even just a little?
Yeah, take these ideas and see how they fit your own life. The sources we looked at are a great starting point if you want to go deeper, but the real power comes from applying these insights.